Hi, folks. You're with Tacitus today at your Pushback channel, and thank you for joining this radio live stream. In this essay, I'd like to talk about there's a few reports floating around at the moment, one from the United Nations suggesting that climate change is causing, or will cause, and has started to cause, and will continue to cause mass starvation and death in East Africa, and that these people need to be moved, preferably to, firstly, there needs to be a massive relief effort, so give generously to that. But just as importantly, these people, if they decide to become refugees and move to the West, the white West has a damn moral responsibility to put all these people up in five-star hotels, give them free everything, including mobile phones, and give them a standard of living that they couldn't even have dreamed of if in their own country, even in good times. So they'd be brought to the West and gifted a first world lifestyle. But anyway, look, that's an opinion there from the United Nations. But how does it hold up? Have a little look at the thumbnail and at the starving Africans in the thumbnail, and you say, well, gee, that looks pretty bad. Maybe we all should do something. That's from about 1967, that photograph. 1967. So 60 years ago, getting on for 60 years ago. That seems to suggest that this has been a problem in that part of Africa for a long, long time. And in fact, when the first white explorers started going through there in the 1800s, they noted exactly the same thing, the widespread starvation and all sorts of things like that. So at the very least, in terms of modern documented history, these sort of things have been going on in that part of Africa for more than 200 years. If we also look at the slave trade in that area, a lot of the slave trade, when the blacks selling each other, this is not nothing to do with whites, this is before white people ever showed up, blacks selling slaves to the Arab slavers that were plying the East African trading routes there, was that if food was in short supply, then you can have these people die of starvation, or you can sell them as slaves and make a dollar, selling it to the Arab slavers. No white people inside here. This is just black people enslaving each other and selling it to the Arab slavers. So this was a way of depopulating the place when they couldn't support the people they had with the resources they had. Now, they were always at war with each other and always burning each other's crops and trampling each other's crops, all this sort of thing. And they weren't sort of big on crops anyway. But if there was a bit of a drought, if the herds of animals were a little bit slow in coming, that alone could be enough to create starvation. But let's come back to this idea the United Nations is pushing, that their argument is that all these deaths are going to occur because of drought. The drought is caused by climate change. That's the problem. Climate change is the issue. These people are going to be climate refugees, and the West should take them in. Now, this just happens to fall very neatly, almost perfectly into the globalist script. So wouldn't you know it? What a coincidence. But let's just have a look. Now, the population 30 years ago in this East African area, the population 30 years ago was 13.5 million people in this area, 13.5 million. And they were already struggling to feed themselves then. But the West came to the rescue. There was huge food relief efforts, almost permanent refugee camps and food camps and this sort of thing. Now, rather than make this area self-sufficient, and which is hard in a place with tribal warfare, you dig a well for them, and then the other tribe will come along and put dead animals in the well so that the water can't be used. So there's always these things going on, which makes it tough. But instead of putting resources into those areas and helping these people be self-sufficient, instead they just gave them gifts of food, gifts of medicine, gave them a level of medical care and feeding that they would never have had under natural conditions. So what did these people do? They're very basic people. They're rural, tribal, Stone Age peasants, effectively. So what do they do if you give them all this free food and all this free medical care? The child mortality rate approaches 50% in some of these areas. So you give them all this medical care, and suddenly the child mortality rate drops to 10%. And as soon as they've got plentiful food ongoing, they procreate. And so there's massive procreation. The children live. It's not unusual to have 10 or more children per woman. So the population, even with the civil wars and all the problems, the population has gone from just over 13 million 30 years ago. This is only 30 years ago. So just get this, has gone from 13 million to almost 60 million in 30 years. So in all of these areas, the populations have increased by, well, you can tell 13 million to nearly 60 million. So, that's what, 4.5 times. So the population has increased by 450% in 30 years. Now, a lot of these people are between the ages of, 12 and 25. That's potentially explosive in areas like that where these people want to join tribes and go and kill the other tribe and that sort of stuff. But it goes to show now that area that couldn't even reliably support 13 million people, agriculturally and so on, now has to support nearly 60 million people. And it can't do it, so the amount of aid increases and then increases again, and then some more and some more on top of that. So what do these people then do? They then have more children. And so on it goes. So girls as young as 12 and 13 are having children. So it's a procreation extravaganza there. So for every tiny bit of help that's given, the problem increases, as you see here. This is almost beyond conception. A 450% increase in population in 30 years. I mean, is that even possible, for goodness sakes? But if you've got girls 12 and 13 procreating, then it is. So this is the issue. So it's always far more nuanced than it's just climate change, or it's just drought, or just this, just that. It's a whole combination of factors, and the massive aid the West has given them in food and the food camps where it's distributed, the water that's brought in, the medical care, particularly the medical care, and women who'd be too emaciated to menstruate and thus unable to procreate are now very happily procreating and doing so prodigiously. So these are some of the other issues. So when you hear these United Nations, we've got to bring on climate activism, we've got to climate refugees, you need to just look a little bit more closely at the facts. And as with all these things that come out of the globalist controlled United Nations, World Economic Forum, and even your government, when you start to sort of look at the hard numbers and the hard realities and the facts, you'll find it's far more nuanced than they're telling you. You've been with Tassos today, your Pushback channel, and thank you for listening.